I'm Rebecca Wilson, 32, and I finally earned my master's degree after 10 years of struggle. My family gathered at my apartment to celebrate, including my sister Stephanie and her son Nathan. I splurged on a beautiful three-tiered cake that cost a week's salary. As I prepared to cut it, Nathan deliberately pushed it off the table. The cake hit the floor with a sickening splat blue frosting everywhere. In the stunned silence, he smirked and said, "If you're so smart now, eat it off the ground." What happened next changed my family forever. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when others try to tear you down. I never thought I'd be the one in my family to pursue higher education. At 22, I dropped out of my undergraduate program when my student loans became overwhelming. While my friends walked across stages in caps and gowns, I waitressed at 3 different diners, worked retail on weekends, and took night shifts at a 24-hour convenience store. Every dollar I earned went toward rent, groceries, and slowly chipping away at my student debt. My sister Stephanie had it different. 3 years older than me, she married young to her high school sweetheart Jacob, and had Nathan when she was only 19. Our parents, Thomas and Elaine, immediately transformed into doting grandparents. They helped the young family with a down payment on their first house, babysat whenever needed, and showered Nathan with gifts. Meanwhile, when I asked for help with tuition, they gave me apologetic smiles and said, "We just don't have it right now, sweetheart." I don't blame them entirely. Nathan was their first grandchild, and they were excited. But the pattern continued for years. Christmas at our house meant Nathan received mountains of presents while I got practical items like socks or grocery store gift cards. Family vacations were planned around Nathan's school schedule. Family conversations revolved around Nathan's latest accomplishments, no matter how minor. My achievements were acknowledged with quick congratulations before someone changed the subject back to Nathan. When Jacob left Stephanie for his coworker 5 years ago, my parents doubled down. They moved Stephanie and Nathan into their house for 6 months. Dad took Nathan fishing every weekend. Mom taught him to cook his favorite meals. They became even more lenient with him, excusing behavior that would have never been tolerated when Stephanie and I were growing up. That's when Nathan's entitlement truly began to flourish. At 12, he refused to say please or thank you. My parents laughed it off as just a phase. At 14, he broke my mother's favorite vase while roughhousing indoors after being told repeatedly to stop. My father paid for a replacement and told my mother not to be so hard on the boy. By 15, Nathan was regularly talking back to teachers, resulting in multiple suspensions. Stephanie defended him, claiming the teachers just didn't understand him. I tried to maintain a relationship with my nephew despite his behavior. I invited him to museums when I could afford it, bought him books I thought he might enjoy, and attended his school events when his mother was working. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the sweet child he had once been. But those moments grew increasingly rare as he entered his teen years. When Nathan turned 16, he expected my parents to buy him a car. When they explained they couldn't afford a new vehicle but would help him find a used one if he saved some money himself, he threw a tantrum worthy of a toddler. He didn't speak to them for 2 weeks. Stephanie sided with her son, telling our parents they had promised him a car. They hadn't, but they eventually gave in anyway, stretching their retirement savings to make the purchase. Meanwhile, I had slowly been rebuilding my education. One community college course at a time, one student loan payment after another. I transferred credits, applied for scholarships, and finally completed my bachelor's degree in education at 29. No one from my family attended the graduation ceremony. Nathan had a soccer tournament that weekend. Rather than feeling defeated, I pushed forward. I applied to graduate programs, secured a combination of loans and grants, and continued working multiple jobs. Teaching assistant during the day, bartender, at night test prep tutor on weekends. The schedule was exhausting, but I was determined. When I was accepted into the master's program for education leadership, I called my parents immediately. Mom said, "That's nice, dear," before telling me about Nathan making the varsity basketball team. I swallowed my disappointment and congratulated my nephew the next time I saw him. He shrugged and said, "It's not a big deal. Anyone can get into grad school these days." Despite everything completing, my master's degree felt like climbing Mount Everest. Every paper, every project, every exam represented countless sacrifices. Nights without sleep, social events, missed relationships that faded due to my absence. The day I submitted my final thesis, I cried for an hour, overwhelmed by emotion. This time I was determined to celebrate properly. I saved for 3 months to afford a real party. I cleaned my small apartment until it gleamed, hung blue and silver decorations, my university colors, and ordered platters of food I could barely afford. But the crowning glory was the cake, a magnificent 3-tier creation with fondant graduation caps, edible silver pearls, and "Congratulations, Rebecca, Master of Education," written in elegant script. It cost nearly a week's salary, but I wanted something beautiful to commemorate my achievement. I invited my entire family: parents, sister, nephew, aunts, uncles, cousins. I sent proper invitations 6 weeks in advance. I confirmed attendance a week before. For once, I wanted my accomplishment to be the center of attention. Just for one day. The morning of my graduation celebration, I woke up before my alarm, buzzing with nervous energy. Though the ceremony had been the previous weekend, which only my Aunt Catherine and Uncle Michael had attended, today felt like the real culmination of my journey. I spent an hour getting ready, curling my hair, and applying makeup with unusual care. I chose a navy blue dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, the first new dress I'd bought in years that wasn't from a thrift store. My apartment had never looked better. I'd deep cleaned every surface, rearranged furniture to create more space, and even splurged on fresh flowers for the dining table. Silver and blue streamers hung from the ceiling. A congratulations graduate banner stretched across one wall. Balloons in university colors clustered in corners. On the coffee table, I'd arranged framed photos documenting my educational journey, me outside the community college on my first day back, standing with favorite professors, studying late at the library, and finally in my cap and gown, previous weekend. The food delivery arrived exactly on schedule: trays of finger sandwiches, a vegetable platter, homemade macaroni and cheese, a family favorite, and various appetizers I'd carefully selected to please everyone's tastes. I'd even remembered Nathan's preference for buffalo chicken and ordered a special plate just for him. My parents arrived first, exactly at noon. Dad carried a small gift bag, and Mom brought a fruit salad that I hadn't requested but accepted with thanks. "The place looks nice," Dad commented, glancing around. "You didn't need to go to all this trouble." "I wanted to," I replied, taking their coats. "This is important to me." "Of course it is, honey," Mom said already, rearranging the appetizer platters I'd carefully organized. "Though I still think you could have had this at our house. Would have saved you some money." I bit back a reminder that they had hosted 3 separate celebrations for Nathan's high school graduation the previous year. Instead, I thanked them for coming and offered drinks. My aunts, uncles, and cousins arrived in small groups over the next half hour. Uncle Michael and Aunt Catherine brought a beautiful bouquet and a card containing a generous gift card to a professional clothing store for your new career wardrobe, they explained with genuine smiles. My cousin Jessica brought her boyfriend, who shook my hand and said, "Jessica's told me so much about your accomplishments. Congratulations." It felt wonderful to be acknowledged. By 1 o'clock, everyone had arrived except Stephanie and Nathan. The food was set out, drinks were being poured, and conversations flowed around my small living room. I checked my phone repeatedly, sent a text that went unanswered, and tried not to let my irritation show. At 1:30, just as I was considering starting without them, my door buzzed. Stephanie breezed in wearing designer jeans and a silk blouse I knew she couldn't afford on her administrative assistant's salary. "Sorry, we're late," she said, without sounding sorry at all. Nathan had a thing. Nathan slouched in behind her, already looking bored. At 17, he had grown tall and athletic with his father's handsome features. He wore expensive sneakers and a hoodie that probably cost more than my dress. He didn't look at me as he mumbled, "Hey," and immediately scanned the room. "Is there Wi-Fi?" I gave him the password and watched as he immediately retreated to a corner, hunching over his phone. Stephanie headed straight for the food, without so much as a congratulations or acknowledgement of my achievement. Despite this inauspicious start, I was determined to enjoy my celebration. I mingled with my relatives, accepting congratulations and sharing stories about my graduate school experience. My younger cousin Andrew asked thoughtful questions about my thesis research on educational equity, seeming genuinely interested. Even my parents relaxed a bit, Dad telling the story of how I'd taught myself to read before kindergarten, a family tale I hadn't heard him share in years. The first hint of trouble came when I overheard Nathan complaining loudly about the buffalo chicken. "This isn't even real buffalo chicken. The sauce tastes weird." Stephanie immediately jumped in. "Do you want me to order you something else, honey? I can have something delivered." "No," I interjected more firmly than I intended. "There's plenty of food here. He can find something he likes. Nathan rolled his eyes at me while Stephanie gave me a look that suggested I was being unreasonable. I took a deep breath and walked away, reminding myself that this was my day. An hour into the party, I gathered everyone for a toast. I had prepared a short speech thanking everyone for their support. As I spoke about the challenges of returning to school as an adult and my hopes for making a difference as an educator, I noticed Nathan playing a game on his phone, the sound effects audible despite the conversation. Stephanie made no move to address this, instead scrolling through her own phone. And so I concluded, raising my glass, here's to new beginnings and the supportive family that makes achievement possible. Everyone raised their glasses, and for a moment I felt truly celebrated. My Uncle Michael added, to Rebecca, who has shown incredible determination and resilience. We're all proud of you. The cake was scheduled to arrive at 3 p.m. When the doorbell rang right on time, I felt a flutter of excitement. I had kept the design a surprise from everyone wanting to create a special moment. The delivery person helped me set up the cake on the dining table, and I called everyone over for the reveal. The cake was even more beautiful than I had imagined. 3 tiers of vanilla sponge covered in smooth fondant, the exact shade of my university's blue. Silver detailing created elegant patterns around each tier, with small fondant graduation caps placed artfully around the circumference. On top, a larger graduation cap and diploma scroll sat beside lettering that read, "Congratulations, Rebecca, Master of Education," in silver script. It was the most beautiful cake I'd ever seen, and certainly the most expensive I'd ever purchased. Gasps and compliments filled the room as everyone gathered around. Even my mother seemed impressed, reaching for her phone to take pictures. "This must have cost a fortune," she whispered to me, half admiring, half disapproving. "It was worth it," I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. I noticed Nathan hovering at the edge of the group, looking increasingly agitated as everyone focused on the cake and, by extension, my accomplishment. He kept glancing at his mother, who was busy showing my Aunt Catherine photos of Nathan's latest basketball tournament on her phone, momentarily distracted from her son. If I had been paying closer attention, perhaps I would have noticed the warning signs. His clenched jaw, the flush creeping up his neck, the way his eyes darted around the room as everyone ignored him for once. But I was caught up in the moment finally, the center of attention finally being celebrated for my hard work. I picked up the cake knife, preparing to make the first cut, when Nathan stepped forward. "Before we cut the cake," I said, smiling at my gathered family, "I just want to say thank you again for sharing this special day with me. This degree represents—" I never finished that sentence. Nathan moved with surprising speed for someone his size. He stepped forward, placed both hands on the edge of the cake table, and shoved. The table tipped forward, and for one suspended moment I watched in horror as my beautiful cake slid in slow motion before dropping to the floor with a sickening splat. Blue fondant cracked. White cake and filling exploded outward. Silver decorations scattered across my beige carpet. The graduation cap topper broke into pieces. The sound of the cake hitting the floor was followed by absolute silence. I stared at the destroyed cake, unable to process what had just happened. When I finally raised my eyes, Nathan stood across from me, a triumphant smirk on his face. "If you're so smart now," he said, into the shocked silence, "eat it off the ground." The room remained frozen. My parents looked horrified but said nothing. Aunts and uncles exchanged glances. My cousins stared open-mouthed. And Stephanie, after a moment of surprise, merely sighed and said, "Nathan, that wasn't nice. Say sorry." Her tone was the same one she might use if he'd forgotten to put his glass on a coaster. Not as if he'd deliberately destroyed the centerpiece of my celebration. Not as if he'd publicly humiliated me in front of our entire family. Nathan crossed his arms. "Sorry," he said, without a hint of remorse. Then he actually laughed. I couldn't speak. The cake represented more than just a dessert. It symbolized my achievement, my struggle, my triumph over years of being overlooked. And with one spiteful gesture, Nathan had literally brought it crashing down. "It's just a stupid cake," Nathan said, rolling his eyes at my stunned expression. "You're making a big deal over nothing." Something inside me cracked at those words. A stupid cake, nothing. Each tier had cost me hours of bartending tips. The custom design had been planned months in advance. The bakery had requested a non-refundable deposit that equaled my grocery budget for 2 weeks. Why, I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper, "Why would you do that?" Nathan shrugged the gesture, dismissive and infuriating. "Everyone was making such a big deal about your stupid degree. It's not like you cured cancer or something. My father finally spoke up, his voice weak. Son, that wasn't appropriate. We should help clean this up, my mother added, already looking for paper towels, eager to erase the evidence of her grandson's behavior rather than address it. Aunt Catherine placed a hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Rebecca, she said softly. This is terrible. I barely heard her. My eyes had moved to Stephanie, waiting for her to properly discipline her son. Instead, she was brushing cake crumbs from her expensive jeans, looking annoyed but not outraged. Nathan, I said, finding my voice growing stronger, that cake cost me nearly a week's salary. Do you understand that? Not my fault you wasted money on something so stupid, he replied. Stephanie finally intervened, but not in the way I expected. Rebecca, it's just a cake. We can get another one. You're embarrassing yourself by making such a scene. I'm embarrassing myself. The words came out louder than I intended. Your son just destroyed my graduation cake and told me to eat it off the floor, and I'm embarrassing myself. He's a teenager, Stephanie said, as if that explained everything. They do thoughtless things sometimes. It's not the end of the world. The familiar pattern was playing out again. Nathan behaves badly. Stephanie minimizes. My parents look uncomfortable but say nothing. Everyone pretends it's normal. But this time was different. This time I couldn't swallow my feelings and play along. This isn't thoughtless, Stephanie. This is deliberate cruelty. And you've been allowing it, encouraging it for years. My sister's face flushed with anger. Don't tell me how to raise my son. You don't know what it's like being a single parent. No, I don't, I agreed. But I know what respect looks like, and this isn't it. You've always been jealous of the attention Nathan gets, Stephanie shot back. Maybe if you'd gotten married and had kids, instead of being so obsessed with school, you'd understand family priorities better. Her words stung exactly as she intended them to, hitting old insecurities about my perpetually single status and my choice to prioritize education over starting a family. In the past, I might have retreated, apologized, smoothed things over. Not today. Today I looked at my beautiful cake smashed on the floor, at my nephew's smug expression, at my sister's defensive posture, at my parents' helpless discomfort, and something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into clarity. The embarrassment hardened into resolve. Nathan was watching the argument with undisguised amusement, clearly enjoying the drama he had created. That, more than anything, confirmed what I needed to do. Number, Part 5. First reaction and escalation. The blue frosting was seeping into my beige carpet, creating a stain that would likely never come out completely, much like the memory of this moment would never fade from my mind. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Stephanie, I said, my voice calmer. Now, this isn't about jealousy. This is about basic respect, something Nathan clearly hasn't been taught. How dare you question my parenting, Stephanie snapped. You don't have children. You don't understand. I understand that if one of my students behaved this way, there would be serious consequences, I replied. I understand that in the real world, actions like this would get him fired, arrested, or worse. Nathan snorted. Whatever. It's not like I hurt anyone. He glanced down at the destroyed cake. It's just sugar and flour. My father finally stepped forward, putting his arm awkwardly around my shoulders. Let's all calm down. I'll help pay for another cake, Rebecca. I shrugged off his arm. This isn't about the money, Dad. This is about years of allowing Nathan to treat people however he wants without consequences. That's not fair, my mother interjected. Nathan is a good boy who sometimes makes mistakes. A mistake is accidental, I said. This was deliberate and cruel. And it's not the first time. I turned to face the room. My extended family watched with uncomfortable expressions, clearly uncertain whether to intervene or slip out quietly. Do you remember when he broke Grandma's antique music box at Christmas, I asked? Or when he told Cousin Jessica her prom dress made her look fat? Or when he accidentally deleted Uncle Michael's presentation from his laptop? These aren't mistakes. They're choices. You've always had it out for my son, Stephanie, said her voice rising. Just because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted, you take it out on a teenager. My life is exactly what I've worked for, I replied, surprised by my own certainty. And I won't let Nathan ruin this day for me. Nathan rolled his eyes. God, you're so dramatic. It's just a stupid cake. It's not just the cake, I said, looking directly at him. It's the fact that you deliberately ruined something important to me and you're not even sorry. I said sorry, he muttered. No, you said the word sorry with zero remorse. There's a difference. Stephanie grabbed her purse. We're leaving. I won't stand here and let you attack my son. Actually, I said, finding a strength I didn't know I possessed. I think we need to address this properly before anyone leaves. You can't keep us here, Stephanie scoffed. No, but I can ask you to take responsibility just this once. Nathan stepped toward the door. This is stupid. I'm out. I moved to block his path. I'm not a tall woman, 5'4" to Nathan's 6 feet, but in that moment I stood my ground with absolute conviction. This is my home, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My celebration. And for once we're going to address your behavior instead of excusing it. The room fell silent. No one had ever directly challenged Nathan this way, and certainly not me, the aunt, who had always been easy to ignore. Uncertainty flickered across his face, quickly replaced by defiance. He took another step toward me, using his height to try to intimidate me. Move. I didn't budge. No. Nathan glanced at his mother, clearly expecting her to intervene on his behalf, as she always did. Stephanie looked torn, her anger at me, battling with her growing awareness of the situation's seriousness. Nathan, she began, but her voice lacked conviction. I kept my eyes locked on my nephews. I've spent years watching you grow increasingly entitled and disrespectful. I've watched your mother and my parents excuse your behavior time and again. I've stayed quiet to keep the peace. But not today. Today you're going to face consequences. Nathan's face flushed with anger. You can't tell me what to do. You're not my mother. No, I'm not. But I am the person whose celebration you just deliberately ruined. I am someone who deserves an apology, a real one. Nathan's jaw clenched. He looked around the room, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Usually someone would have intervened by now, made excuses for him, changed the subject. Instead, everyone watched in tense silence. Whatever he muttered, attempting to push past me, I stood firm. Not good enough, Nathan. We were at an impasse, neither willing to back down. The tension in the room was palpable, years of family dynamics balancing on this single moment. Part 6. The confrontation. The silence stretched heavy and uncomfortable. I remained in the doorway, blocking Nathan's exit. My heart pounded in my chest, but I refused to show fear. This moment felt pivotal, not just for Nathan and me, but for our entire family. Everyone, please sit down, I said, my teacher's voice emerging naturally. We need to talk about this. To my surprise, people began to move. My aunts and uncles settled onto the couch and chairs. My parents hesitantly took seats at the dining table. Even Stephanie, after a moment's resistance, perched on an armchair, though her posture remained defensive. Only Nathan remained standing, his defiance a palpable force. Nathan, please sit down, I said. I don't have to listen to you, he retorted. No, you don't, I agreed calmly. But I think you should. Because right now you're digging yourself into a hole that will eventually become your grave. My metaphor caught him off guard. He frowned, trying to parse my meaning. What I mean, I continued addressing not just Nathan, but everyone in the room, is that the behavior we're seeing today doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a pattern that's been developing for years. And if we don't address it now, it will only get worse. I turned to face the entire family. I know everyone is uncomfortable right now. I'm uncomfortable too. But I think we've all been uncomfortable for a long time, watching Nathan's behavior and not knowing how to respond. We've been walking on eggshells, making excuses, avoiding confrontation. And in doing so, we've failed him. Stephanie bristled. How dare you say I've failed my son? We've all failed him, I clarified. Myself included. By not setting boundaries, by not holding him accountable, we've taught him that his actions don't have consequences. We've taught him that it's okay to treat people with disrespect. My parents exchanged glances. My father looked at the floor. My mother twisted her hands in her lap. Nathan, I said, turning back to my nephew, do you understand why what you did was wrong? He rolled his eyes. Because it was your precious cake. No, I said patiently. Because you deliberately destroyed something that mattered to someone else. You intentionally caused pain. That's not the person I believe you want to be. You don't know anything about me, he muttered, but I detected the slightest waver in his voice. I know more than you think, I replied. I know you're smart. I know you can be kind when you choose to be. I remember the boy who made me a birthday card with a poem when you were 10. I remember the boy who helped an elderly neighbor shovel snow without being asked. Nathan's expression flickered with surprise that I remembered these things. That boy is still in there, I continued. but he's being overshadowed by the young man who thinks it's acceptable to tell his aunt to eat cake off the floor. It was just a joke, Nathan said, but the defense sounded weak even to my ears. Was it funny? I asked. Does anyone here think it was funny? The room remained silent. Even Stephanie didn't jump to his defense this time. Humor shouldn't come at someone else's expense, I said. And it's never funny to deliberately ruin something someone worked hard for. It's just a cake, Nathan repeated, but with less conviction. It's not just a cake, I said firmly. It's what the cake represents. My achievement. My celebration. My hard work. I paused. Just like this isn't just about cake. It's about respect. It's about empathy. It's about being the kind of person who builds others up instead of tearing them down. Stephanie shifted in her seat. Rebecca, I understand you're upset, but please let me finish, Stephanie, I interrupted, surprising myself with my assertiveness. For years, I've watched you make excuses for Nathan's behavior. I've watched Mom and Dad step in to shield him from consequences. I've stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause conflict. But I realize now that my silence hasn't helped anyone, least of all Nathan. I turned back to my nephew. The world won't be as forgiving as your family has been. College professors won't accept late assignments because you forgot. Employers won't tolerate disrespect toward colleagues. Partners won't stay with someone who disregards their feelings. Nathan's eyes dropped to the floor for the first time, a crack in his armor. I believe you can do better, I said, softening my tone slightly. I believe you want to do better, but that starts with taking responsibility for your actions today. The room fell silent again. All eyes turned to Nathan. The ball was in his court. What do you want from me? He finally asked, his voice smaller than before. I want a genuine apology, I said. Not just words, but understanding. I want you to acknowledge what you did and why it was wrong. I want you to offer to make amends, and most importantly, I want you to mean it. Nathan glanced at his mother, clearly hoping for rescue. But something had shifted in Stephanie's expression. She looked tired suddenly and older than her 36 years. Nathan, she said quietly, I think you should listen to your aunt. It was the first time in years I'd heard Stephanie side against her son. The significance wasn't lost on anyone in the room, least of all Nathan. His face registered shock, then betrayal, then just briefly fear. The family dynamic was changing before our eyes, the ground shifting beneath our feet. None of us were on solid footing anymore, least of all Nathan, who had just lost his strongest defender. The silence that followed Stephanie's statement felt endless. Nathan stood frozen, clearly struggling to process this unexpected development. My sister had never failed to defend him before, regardless of his behavior. Her sudden abdication left him visibly shaken. Into this silence, my Uncle Michael unexpectedly spoke up. Rebecca's right. All eyes turned to him. We've all been complicit in this situation. We've watched Nathan's behavior worsen over the years and said nothing, done nothing. Aunt Catherine nodded beside him. I've wanted to say something so many times, but it never seemed like my place. It's all our place, Uncle Michael continued. We're family. We're supposed to help each other grow, not enable harmful behavior. Nathan's face flushed with anger and embarrassment as more family members began to voice agreement. My cousin Jessica spoke next. Nathan, when you made that comment about my prom dress last year, it hurt. I cried in the bathroom for an hour. But everyone acted like it was fine, so I pretended it was too. Nathan shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet Jessica's eyes. My father cleared his throat. Son, he said, addressing Nathan with unusual seriousness, your grandmother and I have let too much slide. We thought we were helping, but I see now we weren't. We were trying to compensate, my mother added softly. After your father left, we didn't want you to feel abandoned, but we've gone too far in the other direction. Nathan's defiant posture began to crumble at the mention of his father. His shoulders hunched slightly, making him appear younger and more vulnerable. Stephanie stood up suddenly. This isn't fair. You're all ganging up on him. No, I said gently. We're finally being honest. There's a difference. Stephanie's eyes filled with unexpected tears. You don't understand how hard it's been. Raising him alone. Working full-time. Trying to be both parents. You're right, I don't fully understand, I acknowledged. But I do know that protecting him from consequences isn't preparing him for the real world. I've done my best, Stephanie said, her voice breaking. I know you have, I replied, genuinely sympathetic despite my anger. But part of doing our best as adults is recognizing when our approach isn't working and having the courage to change course. Something in my words seemed to reach her. She sank back into her chair, the fight going out of her. For the first time, I saw my sister not as my rival or Nathan's defender, but as an exhausted single mother who had lost her way. Nathan watched this exchange with growing uncertainty. The unified front he'd expected to face had fractured, but not in the way he'd anticipated. Instead of everyone taking sides, his mother and grandparents versus me, they were collectively acknowledging a shared responsibility. He was no longer the center of a conflict. He was part of a family confronting a difficult truth together. He began then stopped. I didn't think it was such a big deal. I know you didn't, I said. And that's part of the problem. You've become desensitized to the impact of your actions because you've rarely had to face consequences for them. Nathan looked around the room at the faces of family members who had always shielded him with smiles and excuses. Today they looked back with expectation and a touch of sadness. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice barely audible. About the cake. It wasn't much, but it was a start, the first genuine apology I'd heard from him in years. Thank you, I said. I appreciate that. But I think we need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? Nathan asked warily. I mean that an apology is a good first step, but it doesn't fix the cake. It doesn't erase the pattern of behavior. Real change requires action. Stephanie straightened in her chair. What kind of action are you suggesting? Before I could answer, Nathan surprised everyone by speaking up. I could pay for a new cake. The offer hung in the air, simple yet significant. That would be a good start, I agreed. How would you do that? Do you have savings? Nathan hesitated. I could use some of the money Grandpa gave me for my birthday. My father started to protest the birthday money had been earmarked for a new gaming system Nathan had been coveting, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. That sounds appropriate, I said. The cake cost $320. Nathan's eyes widened slightly at the figure, but he nodded. Okay. The atmosphere in the room had shifted tension, giving way to a cautious optimism. The worst had passed and something new was taking shape, a family willing to have difficult conversations to hold each other accountable. Stephanie stood and walked over to me. Rebecca, can we talk privately for a minute? I nodded and we stepped into my bedroom, closing the door behind us. I'm sorry, Stephanie said, immediately her voice breaking. I'm so sorry about the cake, about Nathan, about everything. The apology I'd been waiting years to hear caught me off guard. Thank you, I managed. I don't know when things got so out of control, she continued, sinking onto the edge of my bed. After Jacob left, I was just trying to keep it together, you know. I didn't want Nathan to feel abandoned by his father and rejected by his mother. So I started saying yes to everything, defending everything. I understand, I said, sitting beside her. But protecting him from consequences isn't protection at all. It's setting him up for failure. I know Stephanie admitted wiping away tears. I see that now. But it's terrifying to think about changing everything. What if he hates me? What if I lose him too? He might be angry at first, I acknowledged. Change is hard. But in the long run, you won't lose him. You'll help him become someone worth being. Stephanie nodded slowly. I've been jealous of you, she confessed unexpectedly. You've been building this amazing career while I've been stuck in the same assistant job for 8 years. Her honesty surprised me. I've been jealous of you too, I admitted. The way Mom and Dad have always put you and Nathan first. We looked at each other, really looked at each other, perhaps for the first time in years. In that moment, we weren't rivals or even sisters with a complicated history. We were just two women trying to find our way, carrying our own unique burdens. I'm proud of you, Stephanie said softly, for finishing your degree, for standing up to us today. It can't have been easy. It wasn't, I confirmed. But it was necessary. When we returned to the living room, Nathan was on his hands and knees carefully picking pieces of cake off the carpet. My aunt was helping, holding a garbage bag open beside him. Nathan looked up as we entered. I've been thinking, he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. Maybe I should talk to someone, like a counselor or something. Stephanie and I exchanged surprised glances. I think that would be a great idea, Stephanie said carefully. Uncle Michael said he went to therapy after his divorce, Nathan continued. He said it helped him stop being so angry all the time. He glanced at our uncle, who nodded encouragingly. That takes courage to suggest, I told Nathan. I'm proud of you for that. He ducked his head, embarrassed but clearly pleased by the praise. As we all worked together to clean up the destroyed cake, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find my neighbor, Mrs. Mitchell, holding a small chocolate cake from the local grocery store. I heard raised voices, she explained, looking embarrassed, and then what sounded like something falling. I just wanted to check that everything was okay. I was touched by her concern. We had a bit of a family situation, but it's better now. Thank you. Well, I brought this. It's not much, just a grocery store cake, but I thought maybe it might help. She held out the simple chocolate cake with congratulations written in generic blue icing. I invited her in and introduced her to my family. As she set the small cake on the table, Nathan approached her. That was really nice of you, he said, his gratitude seemingly genuine. But it should be a proper celebration cake. He turned to me. I'm going to order a new one. A better one. For next weekend. If that's okay. The offer hung in the air, not just a replacement cake, but the promise of a do-over, a chance to celebrate properly. It was a small gesture, but significant coming from Nathan. I'd like that, I said. Thank you. As Mrs. Mitchell prepared to leave, Nathan held the door for her, a small courtesy I hadn't seen from him in years. When she was gone, he turned to Stephanie. Mom, I think maybe we should try that family therapy thing Grandma mentioned once. For both of us. Stephanie looked stunned, then nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Yes, I think that's a good idea. The afternoon continued, but in a dramatically different way than any of us could have predicted. We shared Mrs. Mitchell's simple chocolate cake, each small piece representing not just dessert but a new beginning. Conversation flowed more honestly than it had in years, painful truths and long-held feelings finally finding voice. As the gathering wound down, Nathan approached me while I was collecting empty plates. Can we talk? He asked hesitantly. Like just us. I led Nathan to the small balcony off my living room. It barely fit 2 chairs, but it offered some privacy while still being visible to the family inside. I wasn't quite ready to be completely alone with him after the day's events. Nathan sat awkwardly, his large frame making the plastic chair look like dollhouse furniture. He stared at his hands for several long moments before speaking. I've been a real jerk to you, he said finally, the words coming out in a rush. Not just today. For a long time. I remained silent, allowing him the space to continue. When I was little, you were my favorite aunt. You used to take me to the science museum and let me get ice cream after, even though Mom said it would spoil my dinner. A faint smile touched his lips at the memory. You never treated me like a little kid. You answered all my questions about stars and dinosaurs and stuff. I remembered those days too, before the entitlement set in, before Stephanie's divorce changed our family dynamic. What happened? I asked gently. Nathan shrugged, but it wasn't dismissive this time. It was the gesture of someone trying to understand himself. When Dad left, everyone started treating me different. Like I might break. Mom stopped saying no. Grandma and Grandpa gave me whatever I wanted. If I got mad or acted out, everyone just tried to make me feel better. That must have been confusing, I offered. Yeah. He picked at a loose thread on his jeans. At first, it was cool, you know, getting my way all the time. But then, he struggled for words. It's like nobody cared enough to tell me when I was being a jerk. Except you sometimes, but then Mom would shut you down. The insight surprised me. At 17, Nathan was more self-aware than I'd given him credit for. The cake thing, he continued. I don't even know why I did it. I was just so mad. Everyone was making a big deal about your degree, and it felt like you weren't the center of attention for once, I suggested. He flushed but nodded. That sounds really pathetic when you say it out loud. Not pathetic, I corrected. Human. We all want to feel important and valued. But we have to learn that other people deserve to feel that way too. I guess I'm not very good at that part yet, he admitted. It's a skill like any other, I told him. It takes practice. Nathan was quiet for a moment, looking out at the view of the neighboring apartment building. Mom said she's going to start family therapy sessions. She seemed really serious about it. How do you feel about that? Scared, he admitted with surprising honesty. What if I find out I'm just a bad person? What if I can't change? Nathan, I said firmly, you're not a bad person. You're a person who's made some bad choices. There's a difference. Do you really believe that he asked, vulnerability plain in his expression? I do, I said. I've seen glimpses of the real you over the years, the thoughtful, kind person underneath the attitude. That's the Nathan I've been waiting to see more of. He nodded, slowly absorbing this. I'm going to pay for a really nice cake, he said, changing subjects with teenage abruptness. Better than the one today. I've got some money saved from my summer job, not just the birthday money from Grandpa. That's very thoughtful, I said. But making amends isn't just about replacing things. It's about changing behaviors. I know, he said. That's the harder part. He hesitated. Would it be okay if I asked you to help me sometimes? Like, if I'm not sure if I'm being a jerk, could I text you or something? The request touched me deeply. I'd be honored, I told him. Any time. When we rejoined the others, Stephanie was helping my mother wash dishes in the kitchen. They looked up as we entered, both appearing relieved to see us returning together without obvious tension. I was just telling your sister my mother said that your father and I would like to host a proper graduation celebration next weekend. A do-over. That's kind, but not necessary, I began. It is necessary, my father interrupted from where he sat at the dining table. We should have offered in the first place. We're proud of you, Rebecca. You accomplished something extraordinary, and we want to celebrate that properly. The acknowledgement I'd been seeking for so long brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you, I managed. Stephanie approached, drying her hands on a dish towel. And I'll help plan it. Properly this time. Over the next hour, as the party wound down, subtle but meaningful shifts in our family dynamic became apparent. My father asked detailed questions about my thesis research and job prospects, showing genuine interest rather than polite attention. My mother, instead of directing all conversation back to Nathan, actively redirected people when they tried to make him the focus. Today is about Rebecca, she reminded everyone more than once. Most surprising was Stephanie's transformation. She actually silenced her phone and put it away, giving her full attention to conversations. When Nathan interrupted her once, she gently but firmly told him to wait his turn, something I hadn't seen her do in years. As family members prepared to leave, Uncle Michael pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. What you did today wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For everyone. Thank you for backing me up, I replied. It made a difference. It was long overdue, he acknowledged. Sometimes families need a catalyst for change. Today, that was you. By early evening, only Stephanie and Nathan remained helping with final cleanup. As they prepared to leave, Nathan approached me with an awkward expression. I made you something, he mumbled, pulling out his phone. It's not much, but... He pulled up a text message and hit send. My phone dinged immediately. I opened the message to find a digital gift card for a local bakery, the one that had made the original cake for exactly $320. I transferred the money from my account right away, he explained. So you could order another cake if you want, or anything else from there. Thank you, Nathan, I said, genuinely touched by the immediate action. That was very responsible. He ducked his head, but I caught the small, pleased smile my praise elicited. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, emotionally exhausted but strangely peaceful. The day had been nothing like I'd planned. My beautiful cake was gone, replaced by empty cake plates from Mrs. Mitchell's grocery store offering. My carefully planned celebration had devolved into family therapy. Yet somehow I felt I'd received something more valuable than a perfect party. My phone chimed with a text from Nathan. I meant what I said about helping with the new celebration. Let me know what you need. Then another text arrived, this one from Stephanie. I've scheduled our first family therapy session for Tuesday. Thank you for today. It was overdue. I smiled at the screen, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. The day had begun with destruction, but had ended with the possibility of something new being built, something healthier, more honest, and ultimately more loving. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I received one more text. This one from my father. Your mother and I have been talking. We've decided to help with your student loans as a graduation present. It's long overdue. We're proud of you, Rebecca. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the message through tears. The acknowledgement and support I'd been seeking for years had finally arrived, not in the way I'd expected, but perhaps in the way we all needed. 3 months after what my family now refers to as the cake incident, we gathered at a local restaurant for a proper graduation celebration. This time, there were no torn decorations, no smashed cake, no cruel words. Instead, there was something I'd rarely experienced in family gatherings: authentic connection. Nathan arrived early to help set up the private dining room my parents had reserved. He'd grown an inch taller in the intervening months, but the most remarkable change was in his demeanor. The sullen, sarcastic teenager had been replaced by a young man who made eye contact when speaking to adults, and actually listened to their responses. "Is this placement okay for the gift table?" he asked, gesturing to a corner spot he'd arranged. "Perfect," I told him, watching as he straightened the tablecloth with unexpected care. "Cool." He hesitated, then added, "I'm really glad we're doing this, for real this time." Stephanie arrived next, bringing a beautiful flower arrangement for the table. "These reminded me of the colors in your graduation gown," she explained, adjusting a bright blue delphinium. Like her son, she seemed transformed, more present, more genuine. The family therapy sessions that began after the cake incident had apparently been challenging but productive. Stephanie had confided during one of our newly established weekly coffee dates that the therapist had helped her recognize how her permissive parenting stemmed from her own guilt and insecurity after Jacob's departure. "I was trying so hard not to be the bad guy that I stopped being a parent at all," she'd admitted. "No wonder Nathan was so out of control." My parents entered the restaurant holding hands, something I hadn't seen in years. The therapy sessions had unexpectedly revealed issues in their own relationship that they'd been avoiding by focusing obsessively on Nathan. They'd begun marriage counseling and seemed happier for it. As the extended family arrived, Uncle Michael and Aunt Catherine, cousins Jessica and Andrew, even Great Aunt Elaine, who rarely left her house these days, I was struck by the warm greetings exchanged, the genuine inquiries about each other's lives. The absence of the strained politeness that had characterized our gatherings for so long. The centerpiece of the celebration was a spectacular graduation cake, even more elaborate than the original. 3 tiers of vanilla sponge with raspberry filling covered in fondant the exact shade of my university's blue. Silver detailing created elegant patterns, and the top featured a handcrafted fondant graduation cap and diploma. The inscription read, "Congratulations, Rebecca, Master of Education, we're proud of you." "Nathan designed it," Stephanie told me quietly as we admired the cake. "He met with the baker 3 times to get it just right." When the time came to cut the cake, Nathan stepped forward with a small speech he'd prepared. "3 months ago, I ruined my aunt's graduation celebration because I was jealous and entitled," he began, his voice steady, despite the difficult admission. "I've spent these months learning how to be less self-centered and more considerate of others. I've got a long way to go, but I want to thank Aunt Rebecca for having the courage to stand up to me that day. It changed my life, and I think it changed our whole family for the better." He turned to me. "I'm really proud of you for getting your master's degree. It took a lot of hard work and sacrifice, and you did it while dealing with, well, us." A gentle laugh rippled through the gathering. "You're going to be an amazing teacher, and your students will be lucky to have you." There wasn't a dry eye in the room as he finished. I hugged him tightly, noting how he returned the embrace without the stiff reluctance of before. Later, as we enjoyed slices of the magnificent cake, my father clinked his glass for attention. "I'd like to make an announcement," he said, standing. "Your mother and I have established a scholarship at Rebecca's university. The Wilson Family Scholarship for non-traditional students will help people who, like our daughter, return to education after time away." I gasped in surprise as he continued. "The first recipient has already been selected, a single mother of 2 who's pursuing her teaching credential. Rebecca will present the award at next month's donor dinner." The gesture touched me deeply. It represented not just acknowledgement of my achievement, but a commitment to helping others follow a similar path. As the celebration continued, I took a moment to reflect on the unexpected journey of the past 3 months. What had begun with a cruel act had catalyzed profound change throughout our family system. Nathan was in therapy learning emotional regulation and empathy. Stephanie was setting boundaries and rebuilding her identity beyond motherhood. My parents were addressing their own relationship issues rather than projecting them onto their children and grandson. And I had discovered a strength and clarity I hadn't known I possessed. Standing up to Nathan that day had been terrifying, but it had taught me that I could advocate for myself effectively and compassionately. This newfound confidence had already served me well in my new position as a middle school English teacher, where setting boundaries and maintaining respect were daily necessities. The experience had transformed my teaching approach as well. I recognized in many of my students the same patterns I'd observed in Nathan, children whose behavior problems stemmed not from malice, but from insecurity, inconsistent boundaries, or attempts to meet emotional needs in unhealthy ways. Rather than simply punishing disruptive behavior, I worked to understand its roots and address the underlying issues. 3 weeks earlier, I'd encountered my first major challenge, a student who deliberately destroyed another child's science project. Instead of immediately sending him to the principal, as my colleague suggested, I remembered Nathan and took a different approach. I held the student accountable while helping him understand the impact of his actions and make meaningful amends. The situation became a growth opportunity rather than just a disciplinary incident. "Penny for your thoughts," Stephanie asked, sliding into the chair beside me. "I was just thinking about how much has changed," I admitted. "How different things are now." She nodded, looking around at our family, enjoying themselves. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. If Nathan hadn't destroyed that cake, we might still be stuck in the same unhealthy patterns I finished for her. Exactly. She squeezed my hand. "I've been meaning to tell you I'm going back to school. Part-time online classes to finish my business degree." "Stephanie, that's wonderful," I exclaimed. "You inspired me," she said simply. "Watching you persist despite all the obstacles. If you could do it, why not me?" As the evening wound down, Nathan approached with a small gift box. "One more thing," he said, handing it to me. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a graduation cap. "It's to remind you of your accomplishment," he explained. "And also to remind you that sometimes broken things lead to better things." I hugged him again, marveling at the wisdom in his words. He was right. The shattered cake had ultimately created the breakthrough our family needed. Later that night, as I drove home to my apartment, I reflected on the lessons of the past 3 months. That standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean tearing others down. That facing uncomfortable truths can be painful but necessary for growth. That even the most entrenched family dynamics can change when someone has the courage to challenge them. That it's never too late to create healthier relationships and boundaries. And perhaps most importantly, that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can become catalysts for the most meaningful transformation. So if you're facing a situation where someone is trying to diminish your achievements or make you feel small, remember my story. Don't eat the cake off the floor, stand tall, and speak your truth. The confrontation may be difficult, but the growth that follows could change everything for the better. I'd love to hear your stories of standing up for yourself in challenging situations. Have you ever had to confront a family member about their behavior? How did it go? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Your courage might be the inspiration someone else needs to make a positive change in their own life. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve to celebrate your achievements, no matter what anyone else says.